Picture a prison with no walls. Now fill it with flowers. Add silk ribbons, dance music. Tea served in china so thin the candlelight shines through it, and a mother in the corner of every room who never ever blinks. That's the London marriage market in 1862. The most polite battlefield in the world. The most expensive cage ever built by loving hands. A place where a girl could be worth £8,000 at 9 o'clock in the evening, and worth nothing at all by 1/4 past, and the only thing that changed in those 15 minutes was a door that closed. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists staring at crinolines and top hats. We're living it. 1 year, 1 woman. Everything she would have seen, smelled, heard, and guarded. So, I make these history stories, and honestly I have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just weirdos who like hearing about ruined reputations and the exact price of a pair of kid gloves. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. Your eyes open to darkness. For a moment, maybe half a second, you've forgotten where you are. Then it hits you. The smell. It's not just one smell. It's layers. Coal smoke. First and always. Seeping through the window sash from 100,000 chimneys already lit against the October cold. Then tallow. The cheap candle you were allowed to burn for exactly 20 minutes last night. Its dead grease still hanging in the air. Then camphor and lavender from the clothes press on the landing. The smell of good wool being defended against moths the way a fortress is defended against siege. Then damp horsehair from the mattress under you, and old varnish, and the cold metallic breath of a fireplace that has no fire in it. 'Cause companions do not get fires in their bedrooms before November, and underneath it all the faint warm animal smell of your own unwashed hair. Because your washing water arrives when Hannah has time to carry it, and Hannah's time belongs to 11 people before it belongs to you. Welcome to Bayswater, London, in October of 1862. You're lying on a narrow iron bedstead in a back bedroom on the 3rd floor of number 14, Porchester Terrace, a tall white stucco house with pillars at the door, in a street so new and so respectable that the trees planted along the pavement are still thin as walking sticks. Below you, 2 floors down, sleeps a family whose name you must now defend with your life. Not their money, not their silver, something worth more than either. Your name is Louisa Hart. You're 26 years old, and you arrived here 3 weeks ago from a village in Suffolk with a tin trunk. A letter of character from the Dean's wife, £4 and 11 shillings, and a dead father, the Reverend George Hart, rector of a small parish near Bury St Edmunds, died in January of this year, of a pleurisy that took 9 days to kill him. He left you his books, his good name, and almost nothing else. Because a clergyman's stipend dies with the clergyman. Back home, everyone said London would swallow you whole. They weren't wrong, they just didn't understand what kind of swallowing it would be. You're what the advertisements in the Times call a companion chaperone. £25 a year, paid quarterly with board, lodging and washing. For that sum you have one duty, and it was explained to you in this house, on your first evening by Mrs. Aldersey herself, in a voice you've not stopped hearing since. Miss Hart, my daughter is 18. She's about to enter society. From this day until the day she is married, she is never, never to be left alone with a man. Not in a room, not in a garden, not in a carriage, not on a staircase, not for 5 minutes, not for one. If she is, it will not matter what happened or did not happen. It will only matter that it could have. Do you understand me? You said yes. You thought you understood. You're beginning to learn that you understood nothing. Because here is the thing nobody tells you about this rule, this strange, iron, unblinking rule that governs every drawing room in England. It is not really about virtue. It is about evidence. A girl's reputation is the only property she owns that her father cannot bank and her mother cannot lock in a drawer, and it works exactly like credit in the city. It exists only as long as everyone agrees it exists. It cannot be proved. It can only be doubted. And the moment it is doubted, the moment one pair of eyes sees one closed door, the whole structure calls in its loans at once. A reputation is a bank that allows no overdraft. Mrs. Escombe will say that to you in a few weeks, and you will never forget it. But you're not supposed to know Mrs. Escombe yet. It is 6 o'clock in the morning. It is cold, and you need to get up. The floorboards are like iron under your bare feet. You break the skin of ice, not quite ice, but wanting to be, on the water in the basin, and you wash your face and neck and hands in the dark, gasping quietly, because gasping loudly would wake the house. And a companion who wakes the house is a companion who is noticed, and a companion who is noticed is halfway to being dismissed. You dress in the dark too. You can do it blind now. Chemise, stays, laced firm but not fashionably tight, because you're not the one on display. 2 flannel petticoats against the cold, and then your day dress, a grey merino high to the throat, with white linen collar and cuffs. The collar and cuffs matter enormously. They are the whole vocabulary of your position. Clean white linen says, gentlewoman. Grey wool says, poor. Together they say, this woman is respectable, educated, trustworthy, and absolutely not to be flirted with. You are dressed the way a locked door is dressed. The one thing you own that has any beauty at all is your mother's hairbrush, ivory-backed, with her initials in silver. You brush out your hair with it, 50 strokes, and pin it flat and smooth. Nothing curled, nothing soft. Curls are for Georgina, and then you take up the small black reticule that goes everywhere you go, and you check its contents by touch, the way a soldier checks his cartridge box. A needle case, a reel of white silk thread and a reel of black, 6 spare pearl buttons, glove-sized, in a twist of paper, a small pair of scissors, sal volatile in a stoppered bottle for faints, a spare pair of white kid gloves, size 6 1/4, Georgina's size, not yours, and 1 shilling and 4pence, which is all of your own money you allow yourself to carry. That little bag is your entire professional equipment. You will learn, before this year is out, that a needle and thread produced at the correct moment can save a girl's whole life. That is not an exaggeration. Remember the buttons. Remember the thread. Downstairs the house is waking in strict order, like a ship. Hannah Prout, the upper housemaid, is already on her knees in the breakfast room blacking the grate, her hands grey to the wrist. She is 20, quick, Norfolk-born, and the first person in this house who was kind to you. On your second morning she looked at your accent, placed it within 10 miles, and said, "You're Fen country, I'm Swaffham. We'd better stick together then," and went back to her grate. In a house like this, the servants know you are not one of them, and the family knows you are not one of the family. You live on a landing between 2 worlds, and Hannah is the only other person who understands what the landing is like. They're saying downstairs it'll be calls today, Hannah murmurs now, not looking up, her brush going scratch, scratch against the iron. Mrs. had her lavender silk sponged and pressed last night, and Miss Georgina's been told her blue. Calls. Your stomach tightens and you note the fact with clinical interest. the way you've started noting everything. 3 weeks in this house and your body has already learned what the word means. Today, for the first time, you go on duty in the open field. Because here is what calls means, and I need you to understand what that means in 1862, because it is not visiting, it is not friendship, it is not tea with acquaintances. Morning calls, which happen absurdly in the afternoon between 3 o'clock and 5, are the stock exchange of respectable society. They are how connection is offered, tested, priced and withdrawn. 15 minutes in a drawing room, gloves on, bonnet on, sitting on the edge of a chair, no refreshment beyond the barest sip, no conversation beyond the weather, the exhibition, and other people's marriages. Then you rise, you leave, and the whole transaction is recorded, not on paper, but in the memory of every woman present, which is more permanent than paper. 15 minutes, no more. Stay 20, and you're encroaching. Stay 10, and you have snubbed your hostess. The clock on a drawing-room chimney-piece is not furniture. It is an umpire. And through all of it, every minute of it, one law sits above the others, the law you were hired to enforce. Georgina Aldersey, 18 years old, pretty, worth £8,000, must never be where a man and a closed door are the only other things in the room. You go down to breakfast. Your breakfast, which happens in the small back parlour after the family has begun theirs. Tea and bread and butter, eaten quickly and alone. Through the wall you can hear them. Mr. Aldersey's low voice reading items aloud from the Times. Mrs. Aldersey answering in the tone she uses for her husband, which is softer than the tone she uses for you. And Georgina, laughing at something, the sound running up like a scale on a piano, careless, bright, and completely unaware that from today, that laugh is a commodity, and every ear in every drawing-room in Bayswater will be weighing it. You butter your bread and you listen, and you think about what you're actually paid to do. You are paid to be a wall that walks, sews, speaks French, and plays the piano just well enough to accompany dancing, but never well enough to be admired. When Georgina walks in the park, you are 3 feet behind her. When Georgina dances, you're seated against the ballroom wall, with the mothers and the other companions watching. When a gentleman calls, you're in the room, near the window, doing needlework, present and silent, seen and not seen. There is a word for women like you, used by fashionable young men who think they are witty. They call the row of chaperones at a ball the furniture. You are 26 years old. You can read Latin, keep accounts, dress a wound and argue theology, and your profession is to be furniture. Yeah, that stings. That's normal. Every companion in London carries that sting somewhere under her collar. Nobody at your level can afford to take it out and look at it very often. You take a breath, and you finish your tea, and you put the sting away, because the bell is ringing, and Mrs. Aldersey wants you in the morning room, and the working day of the most invisible profession in England is about to begin. One more thing before you go up. One question that will sit under this whole year like a stone under a carpet, and you might as well hear it now. At the start, everyone in this story is watched. Georgina is watched by you. You're watched by Mrs. Aldersey. Mrs. Aldersey is watched by every hostess in Bayswater, and every hostess in Bayswater is watched by every other. The men are watched too. Their incomes guessed, their debts whispered, their intentions read like weather signs. So here is the question. If everyone is watching everyone and nobody may ever be alone, who in this whole gleaming city is free? Hold that question. It has a longer answer than you think. The morning room smells of beeswax and hot silk where the iron has been at work. Mrs. Aldersey stands by the window with a list in her hand. She's 45, handsome the way a well-kept ledger is handsome, and she'd been planning this campaign, and it is a campaign, for 18 years. Miss Hart, good. Now attend. She does not ask you to sit. You do not expect it. Today we call upon Mrs. Turnour in Westbourne Terrace, Lady Havisham in Gloucester Square, and Mrs. Colfax, she says. Mrs. Colfax has 2 sons. You will therefore be particularly awake at Mrs. Colfax's. Do you have your needlework? Good. You will take the chair nearest the door. If either of the Colfax sons should be at home, which is possible since Mrs. Colfax arranges these things, you will remain in the room at all times. If Georgina is asked to see the conservatory, the garden, the new photographs, a picture in the hall, a horse, a dog, or anything else whatsoever that lies beyond the drawing-room door, you will rise and accompany her. You will do this pleasantly and without appearing to do it. That is the whole art, Miss Hart. It must never look like guarding. It must look like accident. She sets down the list. Now, show me that you know the cards. This is a catechism, and you have been made to learn it like one. Because before you can guard a girl, you must speak the language the whole game is played in, and the language is made of small oblongs of pasteboard. A lady's visiting card, 3 inches and a half by 2.5, her name engraved, never printed. Printing is vulgar. A gentleman's card smaller to fit a waistcoat pocket. When you call and the lady of the house is not at home or is pretending not to be at home, which is a settled and accepted fiction that deceives nobody, you leave cards. A wife leaves her own card and 2 of her husband's. And the corners. This is the part that matters. A card left flat by a servant is mere routine. But a card with the right-hand corner turned down says, I came in person. I climbed your steps with my own feet. The fold in the pasteboard is a signature of the body itself. And, Mrs. Aldersey says, watching you, if a single gentleman leaves his card not for the mistress of a house, but marked in any way for an unmarried daughter of that house, then he has done a thing he must answer for, you say. A gentleman leaves his card for the ladies of the house together through the mother. A card aimed at the daughter alone is an impertinence. It is a declaration, Mrs. Aldersey corrects, made too cheap. A man who will not court the mother does not mean well by the daughter. If you ever see such a card on the hall salver, you will bring it to me before Georgina hears of it. Remember that too. A turned corner, a card on a silver tray. Some of the loudest events of this year will be made of pasteboard. Then she takes something from the table and holds it out. A small book of ivory leaves, thin as communion wafers, bound at one corner with a silver pin, with a tiny pencil hanging from it on a silk cord. It fits in your palm like a beetle. Georgina's ball tablets, she says. You'll keep the spare pencil. They snap, and a girl without a pencil at a ball is a girl obliged to let a gentleman write on her card with his own, which I will not have. A dance card. On those ivory leaves, at every ball this coming season, men will write their names against the numbered dances, and that little object will be a legal document. A man's name on a girl's card is a contract witnessed by the whole room. Dance twice with the same man and the room notices. Dance 3 times, and the room decides your wedding date, with or without your participation. The tablets tell the mothers everything. Who asked, who was refused, who came back. Nothing on Georgina's card will ever be private. You slip the spare pencil, 2 inches of cedar and lead, worth a farthing, into your reticule, next to the needle case and the pearl buttons, a farthing pencil, remember it with the rest. And one thing more. Mrs. Aldersey moves to the window, and for a moment her voice loses its ledger flatness. You were a clergyman's daughter, Miss Hart. You will have been raised to think well of people. Correct that. This season there will be men in my drawing-room whose tailors have not been paid since 1859, and they will have better manners than the honest ones. You cannot tell them apart. Nobody can tell them apart. That is why the rule exists. We do not watch our daughters because we distrust them. We watch them because we cannot read men, and the price of misreading one is the whole of a girl's life. Do you understand me? And this time, 3 weeks in, standing in the beeswax smell with the ivory tablets on the table between you, you are beginning to. Georgina comes down at 10, still in her breakfast wrapper with her hair loose down her back, and the room changes temperature. That is not sentiment. It is observation. Some people carry weather with them. She's 18, fair, with her father's quick grey eyes and her mother's obstinate chin, and she has the particular glow of a person to whom nothing bad has ever happened yet. Mama, Hannah says we're calling on the Colfaxes, and I say it's because of Henry Colfax, and I wish you would simply say so instead of looking like that. Georgina, well, I do. She drops onto the sofa beside you, uninvited, easy, and picks up the end of your needlework to look at it. And this is why, God help you, you already like her. She treats you like a person. She's the only one in the house who does. Miss Hart, you've met exactly everyone by now. Is Henry Colfax dreadful? I've been in London 3 weeks, Miss Aldersey. I've met the butcher's boy and the curate. And which is dreadful? The curate. She laughs, that scale-run laugh, and her mother says Georgina again in the voice that ends things, and sends her up to dress, and the day begins in earnest. Dressing Georgina for calls takes 40 minutes and 2 people, you and Hannah both, and it is worth describing once, because it is the armour of this whole story, and you will be buckling her into it 100 more times before the year is out. This day's first, over the chemise, and Hannah braces a knee. Gently, this is not the theatrical cruelty of the caricatures. No bedpost, no fainting, just a firm, practised pull, until the waist reads 22 inches. Then the crinoline cage, hoops of watch-spring steel, light as a bird cage and 5 feet across at the hem, that turn a woman into a bell and every doorway into a navigation problem. Then petticoats over the cage to soften the lines of the hoops. Then the dress itself, the blue veil, dropped over her raised arms like a diving bell going over a diver, and the 24 hooks up the back that no woman alive can reach for herself. Understand what that means, mechanically. A lady in 1862 physically cannot dress or undress alone. Her clothes are built on the assumption of servants the way a ship is built on the assumption of a crew, and so her clothing itself is a chaperone. Everything she wears announces that she is never unattended, has never been unattended, could not be unattended if she tried. 24 hooks between her and any possibility of scandal, and every one of them fastened by witnesses. Last, the gloves. White kid, 1 shilling, and 9p the pair at Marshall and Snellgrove, and Georgina splits them. Always the left thumb seam, always. She grips with her left when she laughs, some people do. And Hannah rolls her eyes, and you make a note in your head. The spare pair stays in your reticule, size 6 1/4. A lady's bare hand in a drawing-room in mixed company is an event. It sounds insane. It is simply the rule. The glove is the wall in miniature, and your bag carries a spare wall. While Hannah pins Georgina's hair, you go down before them to see the barouche ordered for 3 o'clock, and you take, as you now always take, the long way past the back of the house, through the dining room, past Mr. Aldersey's study door with its smell of cigars and ink, and along the rear passage where the conservatory is. The conservatory is Mr. Aldersey's one extravagance. Bought from a Birmingham catalogue, glass and white painted iron, 12 feet by 20, stocked with ferns, a plumbago, and a fig that has never figged. It opens off the back drawing room through a pair of glazed doors, and those doors have a brass bolt, and the bolt is bent. It sits proud of its socket and will not seat home. The doors will close and look closed and swing silently open again at a touch. You noticed it your first week. You mentioned it to Hannah, who mentioned it to the housekeeper, who mentioned it to Mr. Aldersey, who said he would send for a man from the ironmonger's. He has not sent for the man. It is a small thing, a domestic nothing, a bolt. File it where you filed the pencil and the buttons and the pasteboard corners. At 3 o'clock precisely, the barouche comes round and you go out into London. And here I have to stop and make you see the street, because you have in your head, probably, a picture of Victorian London that is all fog and gaslight and murder, and Porchester Terrace at 3 o'clock on a bright October afternoon is none of those things. It is a torrent. Broughams, barouches, Victorias, a mail phaeton driven too fast by a boy in a yellow waistcoat, a hansom cab weaving like a wasp, drays hauling coal and beer, a costermonger's barrow of onions, a crossing sweeper, 9 years old maybe, keeping his patch of road clean of the horse dung for the pennies of ladies who cross, and everywhere, drifting and settling like snow that no one ever shovels. The smell, horse, coal, wet straw, and the sweetish rot of the vegetable refuse in the gutters. 50,000 horses work this city every day. Nobody who has stood in an 1862 street ever afterwards believes in the elegance of the past without smiling a little. Georgina sits beside her mother, facing forward. You sit opposite, facing back. Always. The forward seats are for ladies, the backward seat is for the companion. You will spend a measurable fraction of this year travelling backwards through London, watching where everyone else has just been. At Mrs. Turnow's, nothing. 15 minutes. The weather. The exhibition. Out. At Lady Havisham's, cards only. Her ladyship is not at home, which means her ladyship is at home but not to the Alderseys, and Mrs. Aldersey's mouth goes thin as she turns down the corner of her card, snap like a small door closing, and you understand that a rebuff has happened. Silent as everything here is silent, and that it will be answered for some day in the same silent coin. And at Mrs. Colfax's, in a first-floor drawing-room in Hyde Park Gardens with a view over the trees, Henry Colfax is, of course, at home. Watch how this is done, because it is a dance older and stricter than any waltz. Henry Colfax, 24, pink, amiable, stands by the chimney-piece as though he happened to be there. He has been posed there by his mother like a vase. Georgina and Mrs. Aldersey take the sofa. You take the chair nearest the door, produce your needlework and become furniture. The two mothers talk to each other and mean every word for the young people. The young people talk to each other and mean every word for the mothers. Henry asks Georgina whether she has seen the exhibition. Georgina says they are to go on Thursday before it closes. Henry says the machinery in motion is the thing to see. Georgina says she has heard it is very loud. Henry agrees that it is very loud. That is the entire conversation. 11 sentences about a building. And yet you watch both mothers filing it away like clerks, because it is not the words, it is the fact of the words. An exchange has occurred in form before witnesses and can now be built upon or quietly dropped. Nothing in this world is ever only a conversation. Nothing is ever only a walk. Everything is a step in a negotiation that nobody will admit is happening until the day it ends in church. 15 minutes. Mrs. Aldersey rises on the 14th. In the carriage going home, she says to the heir, "A respectable family. 400 a year, perhaps, when his father dies." And Georgina looks out of the window at the traffic and says nothing at all. And you make your first professional note about your ward. She's already decided against Henry Colfax, and her mother does not know it yet, and you are not going to be the one who tells her. On Thursday, you go to the exhibition. The International Exhibition of 1862 stands at South Kensington on the Cromwell Road, and it has been open since the 1st of May, and on the 1st of November it will close forever, so half of London is cramming itself through the doors while it can. From the outside it is a long brick barracks of a thing. Even the newspapers have been rude about it. But at each end rises a dome of glass and iron 260 feet high, and they are the largest domes ever raised in the history of the world, bigger than St. Peter's in Rome, built by an engineer, Captain Francis Folk of the Royal Engineers, not by a cathedral's worth of masons across a century, but by contract in months. Your grandfather ploughed behind horses in Suffolk all his life, and you're standing under a glass sky the size of a parish. Inside it is a roar, not a hum, a roar. The machinery court runs its engines all day. Power looms, printing machines, a steam hammer, Whitworth's guns, pumps breathing like iron whales, and the sound comes up through the soles of your boots. 20,000 people a day move down the nave under the flags of 30 nations. There's a fountain of eau de Cologne. There is the Koh-i-Noor. No, that was last time in 51. This year there are new diamonds and a block of coal weighing many tons, and Mr. Bessemer's steel, and a machine that makes envelopes folding and gumming faster than sight, and Georgina stands in front of the envelope machine of all things transfixed. It never touches them with a hand, she says. How does it know? You are on duty even here, especially here. A crowd, you're learning, is not safety. A crowd is cover. In a drawing room, everyone can be seen. In 20,000 people, a girl can be separated from her party for 3 minutes, and 3 minutes is enough for a lifetime of talk if the wrong pair of eyes sees whom she spent them with. So, you keep your station at Georgina's shoulder, and Mrs. Aldersey keeps hers, and the crowd flows round you like water round pilings, which is exactly when the crowd produces Mr. Frederick Vane. He arrives as an eddy in the stream, a gentleman stepping back from the rail of the machinery court to let ladies pass, lifting his hat, apologising with exactly the right depth of bow, and somehow in the apologising becoming part of your party. He knows the Colfaxes. He was at the rail beside Henry not 2 minutes ago. Henry, pink and pleased, performs the introduction, which makes it respectable. Mrs. Aldersey, Miss Aldersey, may I present Mr. Frederick Vane? He is perhaps 29, dark, easy, beautifully dressed without seeming to have thought about it, which is the expensive way to dress. And he does the thing that men of his kind always do, the thing you were not warned about in words and will never afterwards forget. He is charming to you first, not to Georgina, to you, the companion. He asks your opinion of the picture galleries. He listens to the answer. He makes one small dry joke at the expense of the enormous coal timed for you alone. The furniture, noticed. Warmth spreads through you before you can stop it, and you watch yourself from a small cold distance being disarmed, and you think, so that is how it works. The sentry is not stormed. The sentry is befriended. By the time the party moves on toward the Japanese court, he is walking beside Georgina, in full public, in full propriety, 4 feet of daylight between them and 2 matrons and a companion in convoy. And he is asking her about the envelope machine, and she is telling him how it never touches them with a hand, and she is glowing, and nothing improper is occurring or could occur, and every alarm your 3 weeks of training has built in you is ringing at once, and you could not, if Mrs. Aldersey turned and demanded it, give a single reason why. You get your reason within the quarter hour, and it comes dressed in black silk. Miss Hart, is it not? You are Mrs. Aldersey's new dragon. The voice belongs to a short, broad, bright-eyed widow of perhaps 55, moored in a chair by the Norwegian exhibit with an ebony cane and the stillness of a person watching everything. I am Mrs. Escombe. I have chaperoned other women's daughters for 30 years, which is a life sentence with no possibility of pardon. Sit down. The young people are looking at Japanese screens. They're perfectly safe. There are 140 witnesses. You sit. It does not occur to you to disobey her. You will learn that it does not occur to anyone. You are watching Mr. Vane, she says. I don't know Mr. Vane. No, but you are watching him, which shows aptitude. She turns a ring on her gloved finger, unhurried. I will tell you what I know, because dragons must dine together or be eaten separately. He is a nephew of the Shropshire Vanes, on an allowance, with expectations of an uncle who has excellent health. He dances beautifully. He is received everywhere, and no one, mark me, no one can say a word against him. Then, Miss Hart, the bright eyes come round to you, and they're not bright the way a bird's are. They're bright the way a lamp is in a long corridor at night. In this trade you will meet 2 kinds of danger, the kind people talk about, and the kind no one can say a word against. The second kind is the one that ends girls, because a reputation, my dear, is a bank that allows no overdraft. A man may be overdrawn £10,000 and dine with duchesses. A girl may not be overdrawn 1 hour of one evening. When you understand that the whole system exists because the world has agreed to hold men and girls to different ledgers, not to like it, Miss Hart. I did not say to like it, only to understand it. You will be worth your £25 a year. She produces from her reticule, then, a small black memorandum book, fat as a Bible, its leaves soft with handling, and taps it. 30 years of London, incomes, debts, elopements, annulments, the true ages of every beauty since 1832, and the tailor's bills of every charming man in England. When you need it, and you will need it, you may come and ask. Dragons dine together. She snaps it away. There. That is the whole of my wisdom, and here comes your party, and the tall one has made your girl laugh twice in 10 minutes. Go to work, Miss Hart. That night, back at Porchester Terrace, while Hannah unhooks Georgina 2 floors below, and the house ticks and settles around its banked fires, you sit on your narrow bed, and you write your father's habit into your own life. You keep accounts, not of money, of the day, and at the foot of the page, under exhibition domes, envelope machine. Mrs. E. You write one line you do not entirely understand yet. He was charming to me first, and then, because the candle is guttering and candles cost money and yours are counted, you put out the light and you lie in the dark listening to London, the last cabs, a railway whistle far off toward Paddington, the watchman's tread, and you are 3 weeks into the work of watching, and somewhere out in that huge lamplit city 10,000 other women in grey dresses are lying in 10,000 other cold back bedrooms, keeping accounts of other people's daughters. An army nobody enlisted, defending a currency nobody can see. The word, by the way, chaperon, is Old French. It means a little hood. The hood a falconer fits over a hawk's head. Leather, snug, covering the eyes, so that the wild thing on the glove stays quiet, stays biddable, does not bait at every passing wing, until the moment her master chooses to let her see and strike and be seen. The English drawing-room took the falconer's word and gave it to you. You are the hood over the brightest eyes in the house. Nobody in Porchester Terrace thinks that is strange. That's normal. That's the trade. Sleep now, Louisa. Thursday next, the exhibition closes. The season is dead until spring, and the long winter of watching is about to begin. November comes down on London like a lid. The fogs begin. Real fogs, yellow-grey, tasting of sulphur. Fogs you can lose a cab in. And the fashionable streets empty as the great families go down to the country to shoot things, and a house like number 14 settles into its winter economy. Fires lit at 7. Lamps at 3:30 in the afternoon. The knife boy singing in the area. The muffin man's bell in the fog like a buoy at sea. And the work of making Georgina marriageable goes on all winter, behind the curtains, the way a ship is fitted out in dock. Because this is the part nobody sees, and it is the part you must understand if you want to understand why the rule exists at all. Georgina is not simply waiting to be married. Georgina is being finished, the way a cabinet is finished, and every accomplishment is capital. French with you, an hour each morning. The piano, an hour after breakfast. She plays badly and honestly, which you privately prefer to the reverse. Drawing. The management of a household ledger with her mother Tuesdays, what beef should cost a pound, what a cook is paid, what a butler drinks, and dancing. The dancing master comes Wednesdays, a small, precise Frenchman with a pochette fiddle, and the back drawing-room carpet is taken up, and you are required at the piano, because a dancing lesson is a man and a girl and music, and therefore, even at 11 in the morning, even with her mother's footsteps overhead, it requires you. You play the same 8 bars of waltz 400 times, and you learn something about your ward that her own mother does not know, because her mother has never sat where you sit, at the angle where you can see her lips, Georgina counts, under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way through, every waltz, lips just barely moving, eyes just slightly fixed, like a girl saying a rosary. She dances correctly, and she has never once danced easily. The waltz frightens her. It is still, in 1862, the fast dance, the touching dance, the one the sermons used to be against. And she manages the fright the way her father's clerks manage a column of figures. She counts it into obedience. File that away, too. Of everything in your reticule of small knowledge, that one will pay you strangest and last. You can stand across any ballroom in England, too far to hear a word, and know exactly how safe Georgina feels by watching her mouth. Mr. Aldersey you begin to know at dinner. He is grey, quiet, precise, kind in the abstracted way of a man doing sums behind his eyes at all hours. What he does, you piece together from 100 table scraps. He is a bill broker. His office is in Lombard Street in the city, 3 doors from the great discount house at number 65 that everyone calls the Corner House, Overend, Gurney and Company, the banker's bank, the firm the whole street steers by as if it were a lighthouse. When you ask him once, greatly daring, what a bill broker does, he looks at you with mild surprise and real pleasure, and says, "I deal, Miss Hart, in promises. A merchant in Manchester promises to pay in 90 days. I buy his promise today at a discount and am paid whole when it falls due. The entire commerce of the world is a chain of such promises, and the chain holds because everyone believes it holds." And if they stopped believing, he stirs his soup. Then it would not much matter what was true, he says. Belief is the collateral, Miss Hart. All the rest is arithmetic. You think, but do not say. I know another market like that. I guard its principal asset. She is upstairs practicing her scales. Because you have done the arithmetic. Of course you have. You're your father's daughter, and the sums are not hidden. They are the openest secret in England, printed in the settlements column of every family's private hopes. Georgina's portion is £8,000, held in consols at 3%. That is £240 a year, forever, to whichever man's solicitors sign the settlement. Your salary is £25 a year. You would need 320 years of watching, every year of it flawless, to earn what Georgina is worth on the day she says 4 words in a church. And if, on any single evening between now and that day, she's alone in a room with the wrong man for a quarter of an hour, not touched, not kissed, not harmed, merely alone, merely seen to be alone, the £8,000 does not vanish. That is the refinement of it. The money remains, and no one will take it. There will simply, gradually, mysteriously be no more invitations. The calls will grow shorter, the cards will come flat, corners crisp by servants' hands, and in 2 years her mother will accept, on her behalf, a curate, or a widower with children, or nobody, and everyone will say what a pity such a pretty girl, and no one will ever say why. Ruin in Bayswater is not a scarlet thing. It is quiet market correction. On the 14th of December, the whole country stops. It has been 1 year exactly since Prince Albert died at Windsor. Typhoid fever, they said, gone in a fortnight at 42, and the Queen is still walled up in her grief at Osborne, wearing black, seeing nobody. The court is a tomb. There were no drawing rooms worth the name last spring, no royal balls, a season in half mourning. Church bells toll all morning through the fog. Mrs. Aldersey has the blinds lowered to half, like every house in the street. Georgina at the window watches a coal wagon grind past below and says quietly, "Not really to you. 1 year shut up in the dark, and she's the Queen, Miss Hart. She may do exactly as she pleases, and this is what she pleases." And then, after a silence, "Perhaps nobody may do as they please." 18 years old. You look up from your needlework and you do not tell her she's wrong. But grief, even royal grief, cannot hold London forever, and by Christmas the drawing-rooms are alive with a counter-rumour, the thaw, the announcement that has been in every paper since the autumn. The Prince of Wales is to be married, in March, to Princess Alexandra of Denmark, 19 years old, and by every account lovely. The wedding will be at Windsor, and the princess will come first through London itself in procession, and after 15 months of a nation dressed in black there is going to be, you can feel it building street by street like weather, one enormous, roaring, gaslit exhalation. Which means, says Mrs. Escombe when you meet her next, that the season of 1863 will be the greatest marriage market in 20 years. Every family that hung back last spring out of respect will come up to town at once. Twice the girls, Miss Hart, twice the men, twice the balls, and exactly the usual number of happy endings. Sharpen your needles. Where you meet her is the bazaar, because there is one kind of event that even morning year London permits, and that is charity, and this winter charity has a name, Lancashire, the cotton famine. The war in America has choked off the cotton at the ports. The mills of Lancashire have stopped, and by this December there are close to 500,000 souls on relief in the north. Mill hands, spinners, weavers, whole towns standing idle in the cold, workless through no act of their own. London, guiltily prosperous, responds the way fashionable London responds to everything. It holds a bazaar, a great one, 2 days, in aid of the relief fund, with stalls kept by ladies, and everything priced at triple its worth, and the buying of a pincushion elevated into an act of God. And a bazaar, Miss Hart, attend, is a courtship engine. It is the one public place where an unmarried girl may stand behind a counter and be approached, openly, by any man with a shilling, and speak to him across it, unintroduced, under cover of commerce. The stall is the whole of the proprieties compressed into 4 feet of green baize, a barrier you can lean across but not cross. The mothers invented it, the mothers run it, and the mothers stand at the ends of it, watching while pretending to sell antimacassars. Georgina has a stall shared with a Colfax cousin, pen wipers, needlebooks, a regiment of dressed dolls. You stand at the end of it. 15 minutes in, Henry Colfax arrives, pink with resolve, and buys a needlebook, a pen wiper, and a doll. Pays half a crown, waits for change from his shilling that does not exist, understands too late that at a bazaar there is never change, laughs at himself so honestly that even Mrs. Aldersey's eyes soften, and you can see it happen, at that exact moment and forever, filed by Georgina as a brother. An hour in, Mr. Frederick Vane arrives. He does not buy dolls. He stands before the stall and surveys it like a general, and then he engages Georgina in a negotiation over a 6-penny pen wiper, as gravely as if it were the Vienna settlement, driving the price up against himself, 6pence, a shilling, half a crown. For Lancashire, Miss Aldersey, are we not all obliged to do our utmost, until she is laughing that scale-run laugh, and half the room has turned to look, and he pays 5 shillings for the pen wiper and presents it back to her. To keep for me until I have earned it, and bows and is gone, all in 4 minutes, nothing to reproach, nothing even to describe, and Georgina stands holding the pen wiper with April in her face, in the middle of December. 5 shillings, says Mrs. Escombe at your elbow, materialised from nowhere with her cane and her black silk. For a girl worth £8,000, that, Miss Hart, is what your city gentlemen would call a speculative purchase at a very favourable price. She watches Vane's back recede down the aisle of stalls, bowing here, remembered everywhere. You may come and see me on Thursday. Bring your questions. I am at home to dragons at 4. And it is late that same afternoon, in the thinning crowd, at the far corner stall, where a shy man has been standing for some time buying wool mittens in bulk, for the mill children, he explains to nobody apologetically, as though purchasing too usefully were a breach of taste, that you first take notice of a Mr. Arthur Pemble, solicitor of Bedford Row, 31, tall, spectacled, with good shoulders spoiled by an apologetic stoop, who is presented to the Alderses by Mrs. Colfax in passing. bows over Mrs. Aldouce's hand, says to Georgina, in its entirety, "How do you do?" Fails to think of a single further word, turns the colour of brick, buys another dozen mittens, and retreats. "Poor creature," says Georgina, not unkindly watching him go, and turns back to arranging dolls. "You're the only one who saw that before he fled. He gave the whole stall one straight, quiet, comprehensively intelligent look. Dolls, takings box, Colfax cousin, Georgina, you. As if he were reading a lease, you put him in the evening's accounts, one line, under the 5-shilling pen wiper. Mem. Mr. P sees things, says nothing, the reverse of the other one. The fog thickens toward Christmas. The Queen stays buried at Osborne. In Lancashire 500,000 people stand in relief lines in the cold while the mills hold their breath. And in Bayswater the drapers are already, quietly, taking orders for spring silks in a colour the papers have decided to call Alexandra blue. The whole city is a held breath, mourning with one lung and rejoicing with the other. And on Thursday at 4 o'clock you put on your grey bonnet and go to drink tea with a dragon. Mrs. Escombe lodges in 2 rooms in Welbeck Street over a staymaker's, and the rooms tell you her whole biography before she says a word. Good furniture, too large, salvage from a bigger life. A husband in an oval frame, an officer, dead 30 years by the fashion of his collar, coal in the grate but banked low, and a shawl on every chair. This is what your profession looks like at the far end, Louisa. Look at it well. 30 years of guarding other women's daughters buys you 2 rooms, 1 servant, and the finest intelligence network in London. She gives you strong tea and no preliminaries. The black memorandum book is already on the table between ye, like a third guest. Ask. Mr. Frederick Vane. Ha! She does not even open the book. The book, you realise, is mostly ceremony. The archive is behind her eyes. Frederick Cathcart Vane, 29. The Shropshire Vanes, the younger branch, which is to say the branch with the name and not the timber. His allowance from the uncle is 400 a year. His rooms in Ryder Street are 110. His horse, his club, his tailor, his glover, his hatter, his wine merchant. She counts them off on black-gloved fingers. I make his necessary expenditure 700 at the least, and he has kept it up for 6 years. You are the daughter of a man who kept parish accounts, Miss Hart. Audit that for me. He's 300 a year short, at the least. You do the sum twice cold. 6 years of it. He owes 1,500 pounds. 1,200 is the figure I have from a person in a position to know, renewed quarterly at interest against his expectations. She taps the book once. There is nothing in that ledger, mind, that the world calls disgraceful. Half the men at every ball you will attend this spring live on paper, exactly as your Mr. Aldouce's city lives on paper. But a man 300 a year short does not marry a face, Miss Hart. He marries a fund. 8,000 in consols would clear him at a stroke and leave him 180 a year the richer, and the girl attached to it might be a hat stand for all the difference her conversation makes. Now, tell me what he did at the exhibition. Everything. Order of events. You tell her. She listens with her eyes shut like a physician auscultating a chest and stops you once. He was charming to you first. You're sure of the order? And when you finish, she is quiet for a moment. Textbook, she says, almost with regret. The Century first, then the Treasure, and always before witnesses, always faultless. He will not hurry because his kind never hurry. Hurry is what gets lesser men refuse the house. He will be correct for months. His whole strategy will be to make the correctness itself do the work, to become so established, so expected, so woven into the family's season, that by June the mother believes the thing is settled and stops watching, and the moment arrives on its own. They do not steal the fortress, Miss Hart. They get themselves given the keys. She opens her eyes. Your mother-employer will not hear a word against him, because there is no word to hear. So you will not say words. You will watch, and you will keep your little kit in order, and when the moment comes, there is always a moment, you will simply happen to be standing in it. That is the whole art. Now pour out, and tell me what they are saying in Bayswater about the Danish princess. January then, and February in one breath, because winter in a story is allowed to move the way winter in a life does not. The hard frost comes in the new year. The Serpentine bears, and all Bayswater goes down to skate or watch skating, and even this is drill, for a girl may skate with a gentleman. Cold is a chaperone, daylight is a chaperone, 400 spectators are a chaperone, but she may not be handed her skates by one alone at the bench. The rule has 1,000 small clauses, and you are learning every one. A girl may take a gentleman's arm across ice, not across a dry pavement. May ride beside one in an open carriage, not a closed. May write to one. Never, on no pretext, not a line. For paper is evidence, and evidence is the one thing worse than witnesses. You skate yourself, once, early, when the ice is empty. Fen country. You have skated since before you could read. And for 4 minutes at the far end of the Serpentine, alone, flying, nobody's wall, you are the freest creature in the home counties. Then the crowds come, and you go back to being grey. Lent is early. The Queen's mourning holds the court dark. No drawing room again this spring. The presentations put off. Mothers grinding their teeth from Belgravia to Bayswater. And it does not matter one atom, because the wedding is coming, and the wedding has already swallowed London whole. The date is fixed, the 10th of March. The princess will land at Gravesend on the 7th and come through London the same day. 6 miles of streets. And the 10th is to be kept as close to a national holiday as makes no difference. Shops shuttered, illuminations at night, every public building and half the private ones rigged with gas stars and crowns, and A for Alexandra transparencies. The drapers have sold out of Danish red. There are Alexandra bonnets, Alexandra jackets, and Alexandra curl. After 15 months of crepe, London wants, with one enormous appetite, to be happy. And balls begin again, early small private balls, the season jumping the gun with the general permission grief gives way to at last. And so it is on a Tuesday at the end of February in a house in Lancaster Gate, with 60 couples, 3 fiddles, a harp, a cornet, and a floor chalked with roses, that Georgina Aldersey is, in the only sense that has ever mattered to the marriage market of England, born. You've dressed her for it. White tarlatan over white, snowdrops in her hair, the coral set her father gave her at Christmas, gloves to the elbow, and the ivory tablets with their farthing pencil on a ribbon at her wrist. And you have never in your life seen anything so obviously, so alarmingly ready to be looked at. A ballroom from the chairs along the wall is a counting house. From the chaperone's bench you see what no dancer ever sees, the whole machine at once. The mothers range like brokers on 'Change, tablets of their own behind their eyes. The men arriving in twos from their clubs, unbuttoning their gloves' top buttons, pricing the room from the doorway. The dance cards going round like bills of exchange. A name pencilled against a number, a promise to pay at the 10th dance, discounted, endorsed, occasionally protested. You sit between a deaf great-aunt and a governess with chilblains, needlework on your knee, and you watch your one asset move through the machine, and your whole body is a lens. She dances the first quadrille with Henry Colfax, which is safe as bread. A lancers with a naval cousin of the house. Then Vane, of course Vane, established, expected Vane, who was called in Portchester Terrace twice since Christmas, correct as a clock, 15 minutes, never a second over, always to the mother, barely a look at the daughter, so that even you had half begun to doubt your own ledger. Vane bows and takes the tablets from her wrist and writes, and across the room, without hearing a word, you read the whole transaction. Because when he hands the little book back and Georgina looks down at it, she does not smile a debutante smile. She goes still, 1/2 second of stillness, the stillness of a girl who has just seen something written that changes the temperature of the evening, and then she smiles much too brightly at the chandelier. You cross a ballroom the way you've been taught, which is invisibly by the walls. It takes you 4 minutes. You arrive as the set is forming and say, wall-voiced, "Your flounce, Miss Aldersey. 1 moment," and kneel. And while your fingers pretend at her hem, she holds the tablets down at her side, open where only you can see, and this is the first time your ward has ever deliberately shown you anything, and what she shows you is the 5th dance and the 9th and the supper dance, and against all 3, in a small, beautiful, confident hand, Vane, Vane, Vane. 2 waltzes and the supper dance in February, from a man who is not her betrothed, not her cousin, not anything. Understand the arithmetic of that as the room understands it. 1 dance is nothing. 2 is notice. The room permits 2 barely from an established acquaintance and files it. But the supper dance is the 3rd, and the supper dance is not a dance at all. It is the escort, the arm into the supper room at midnight, the shared chairs, the champagne and chicken, 40 minutes of licensed conversation, and 2 waltzes plus supper, on 1 card on 1 evening, is a public statement nailed to the church door. By Thursday, every drawing-room in Bayswater would have Georgina Aldersey as good as promised to a man with £1,200 of quarterly renewed debt. And she is 18, and it is her first ball, and no one has ever taught her the sum, because teaching it would have required admitting the market exists, and the first rule of the market is that ladies do not admit the market exists. "The 5th I have," you murmur to a hem, "is promised to Mr. Colfax. I wrote it for you this afternoon, you will remember, when he called. You did no such thing. Your eyes come up and hold hers, 1 heartbeat kneeling woman to standing girl, and everything unsaid in 4 months passes through the look. And your mamma has asked that you take supper at her side tonight. She has a headache coming. You know how she's served." Georgina, 18 years old, with April dying in her face and something older arriving there, looks at you for a long moment. "Yes," she says slowly, "I know how she is served." And she takes the farthing pencil off her wrist ribbon and draws it twice neatly through the 9th dance and the supper dance, through his name, through both his names, leaving him the 5th, the single, harmless, filed and forgotten 5th. And when Vane comes for it at the 5th dance, he reads the little ivory page in 1 glance, as fluently as you did, and his face does not change at all, not by a line, and that, more than anything the book in Welbeck Street told you, is what makes the back of your neck go cold. A disappointed lover looks disappointed. A speculator reprices and books the loss and holds the position open. He dances the 5th with her beautifully. He returns us to her mother's side with a bow, correct to the degree. and on his way back down the room, alone through the crowd, he passes the chaperones' bench, and without stopping, without turning his head, quite quietly, to the air between you and the deaf great-aunt, he says, "Well held, Miss Hart," and is gone into the black and white shoal of men by the door. You sit very straight, needle moving, heart going like a watch too fast, and on the bench beside you the governess with chilblains sighs at her feet, and the fiddles swing into the sixth dance, and nobody in that bright roaring room has seen anything happen at all. But something has. The correct siege is over. You have shown him the garrison is awake. Whatever he tries next will not be correct. It comes 4 days later, on a Saturday, on the hall salver, and Hannah brings it to you first. She comes up to your room after the family's dinner, closes the door with her back, and holds it out flat on her grey-seamed palm, a gentleman's card, small, to fit a waistcoat pocket. Mr. Frederick Vane, right-hand corner turned down. I came in person. I climbed your steps with my own feet, and on the back in pencil, in that small confident hand, 4 words, for the pen wiper's keeper, not for Mrs. Aldersey, not for the ladies of the house. A message physically for Georgina, the 5-shilling pen wiper to keep for me until I've earned it, folded into the one object in a London house that is supposed to be as public as a church register. He gave it to the new page boy at the door 3 o'clock when Mrs. and Miss Georgina was at Whiteley's and you was with them, Hannah says. Page put it on the salver, natural. I sorted the salver before the mistress saw it, because she shrugs, fen flat. Because you told me in November what corners mean, and I remember things. Was I right to bring it up? You were right. Your own voice sounds far away to you. Because look at what he has done, Louisa. Be professional. Admire it. If the card reaches Georgina, it is a secret between them. The first secret, the little lever that opens all the others. If the card is intercepted and shown, what is it? A card, left openly at the door by daylight. The door, 4 teasing words about a bazaar joke half the room heard made. Bring that to Mrs. Aldersey as evidence, and it is you who look hysterical, you who have been reading pencil marks like a police spy, you who see plots in pasteboard, and he is one drawing-room laugh away from making the dragon the joke of the season. There is nothing in your hand, and your hand is holding it. It is a declaration made too cheap, you say slowly, Mrs. Aldersey's own words. And then you do the thing you will lie awake over for years, the thing Mrs. Escombe would have ordered and Mrs. Aldersey would have forbidden, and your father, God rest him, would have called by its plain name. You hold the card over your candle and you burn it. Corner first, message last, and you watch. For the pen wiper's keeper go brown, and curl and become nothing that ever existed. There was no card, you say to Hannah. There never is, says Hannah, who's been in service since she was 12, and takes the ash leaf away in her apron. You do not tell Mrs. Aldersey. Mark that. You have begun keeping the family's secrets from the family, which is either the highest form of your profession or the first step off its edge, and you genuinely do not know which, and you will not find out tonight. Blow out the candle, count your guns, a bent bolt, a needle case, 6 pearl buttons, sleep if you can. And now Tuesday, the 3rd of March, 1 week before the wedding of the Prince of Wales, and number 14 Porchester Terrace gives its own evening party, and everything in this story that has been loaded begins to go off. It is Mrs. Aldersey's answer to the coming season, not a ball, a party, 40 people, lobster salad and champagne cup, a hired pianist, the drawing-rooms thrown together, the folding doors back, wax candles by the pound, and the conservatory. Because Mr. Aldersey is proud of the fig, and because 40 people breathe like a laundry, the conservatory doors set open an inch for air, with 2 ferns moved in front of the gap. The Colfaxes come, and Mrs. Turnau with her permanent hunger for other people's misfortunes, and Mrs. Escombe in her black silk with her cane. You got her the card yourself, dragons dine together, and Mr. Arthur Pemble, solicitor, of Bedford Row, invited by Mr. Aldersey, it turns out, who has begun putting city conveyancing his way and calls him, at dinner, the only honest-looking lawyer in London, which I grant is a low bar. And Vane comes. Of course Vane comes. He was asked 3 weeks ago, before the ball, in the age of the correct siege. To strike him from the list now would itself be an event, a thing said aloud. The whole architecture of politeness that keeps girls caged keeps him invited. That is worth 1 turn of your mind as you watch him bow over Mrs. Aldersey's hand at 9 o'clock. Beautiful and easy. The rules protect him too. The rules protect everyone except the person they are about. For 2 hours, nothing. He is at his very best, which is to say his most public. He turns the pages at the piano. He is droll with the Colfax cousin. He loses 6pence at lottery tickets to Mrs. Turnau and pays it with a flourish that makes her his for life. He does not approach Georgina at all. He is so visibly, so scrupulously elsewhere, that only you and 1 old woman by the fire understand that the room is being managed, that a man who is always conspicuously somewhere is a man establishing where he is not. At 11:30 the party begins to loosen, the way parties do. The pianist plays waltzes nobody dances to. The older men wedge into the study doorway with Mr. Aldersey to talk about America and the price of money. Groups form and dissolve, and the crowd's edges go soft. This is the hour. Mrs. Escombe told you in Welbeck Street, never the middle of an evening, always the last hour, when the hostess is tired and triumphant and the room has stopped counting. You have not sat down since 9. Your feet ache like a housemaid's. There is a smiling ache in your face, and you have Georgina, white dress, coral, laughing with the Colfax cousin by the folding doors, in the corner of your eye, always. The way a wet nurse holds a sleeping child's breathing in her ear. And then the supper table catches fire. Only a chafing dish, a footman's sleeve, a spirit lamp, a foot of blue flame and a crash of silver, 3 ladies crying out, Mrs. Aldersey surging toward it, the whole room's eyes going one way to the fire, the way room's eyes do, and yours going the other way, to Georgina, which is the entire content of your professional education in one reflex. When everyone looks at the accident, you look at the asset, and the space by the folding doors is empty. The Colfax cousin is craning at the fire like everyone else. The 2 ferns in front of the conservatory gap have been moved 8 inches apart. The glazed doors are closed, and look closed, exactly the way doors close when a bent bolt will not seat home, 11 steps across the back drawing-room. You do not run. A running chaperone is an alarm bell, and an alarm bell ruins the girl it rings for. If one guest, turns from the burning chafing dish and sees you fly at that door, then it does not matter what you find behind it. The door will have been seen to need flying at. You walk, fast and level. A servant walk. A woman going for more napkins walk, and your right hand is already in your reticule. And this, now, is what the needle case and the thread and the 6 pearl buttons have been riding toward since October, because what you need on the far side of that door is not force and not outrage. It is a reason. An innocent, boring, checkable, female reason for every person in that conservatory to be exactly where they are. You put your palm flat on the glazed door. It gives, of course, silent an inch, the bolt riding loose in its bent keeper, thank you, Mr. Aldersey, who never sent for the ironmonger's man, and you are through, into fern smell and damp warmth and gaslight falling in green stripes. They're at the far end, by the fig, 10 feet apart still. Give her that. Give even him that. 4 minutes is what the fire has bought him, and he has spent the first 2 of them getting her to come and see how the wedding illuminations are being rigged along the Meuse, some gas star nonsense visible through the far glass. A reason, because his kind always provide the girl her reason. But he is between Georgina and the door. That is the geometry that matters. He is closing the 10 feet at the pace of a man strolling a gallery, and his voice is pitched at the private register no man has ever used to her before. And Georgina, you will remember this all your life, Georgina has just, in this second, stopped believing her own reason for being there. You can see it in her back. 18 years old, worth £8,000, 3 minutes from the end of her name, and her lips, God love her, her lips are moving. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Counting the fright into obedience. Miss Aldersey, your voice arrives before you do, and it is a masterpiece. You will never do anything better in your life. Warm, harried, faintly cross, thick with lobster salad and hostess errands, a voice with absolutely nothing in it. There you are. Your flounce is torn clean through at the hem. I saw it from the doorway. You cannot go back into a lit room trailing Tarleton. Stand still. And you are already kneeling in front of her, between her and him, your back to Mr. Frederick Vane, as though he were a fern, a coat stand, furniture, and your scissors are out, and you nip the stitches of the flounce yourself where he cannot see. One snick, so that the tear is real. Evidence is real, Louisa. And then needle, white silk, the 6 pearl buttons spilling their twist of paper into your palm as if disturbed in a mending bag long overdue for one. And a button gone at your glove too, I declare. You are hard on your things. Hold your hand down. And over your bent head, in the green light, the 2 of them look at each other across your kneeling body. The girl with her hand held down to you like a child at a nurse. The man with 4 minutes shrinking to nothing in his beautiful waistcoat. And what can he do? What actually, physically, in the England of 1863 can he do? A woman is mending a flounce. That is the whole visible universe. To object is to say aloud what mending it prevents. To stay is to stand watching a servantish operation of hooks and thread, smaller by the second. To go is the only move on the board. That is what your kit is, Louisa. You understand your own luggage at last, kneeling on the tile with your mouth full of pins. It is not a mending bag. It is the power to make any room in England instantly, fatally domestic. You will excuse me, says Mr. Vane to nobody in particular, delivering the line perfectly because he delivers every line perfectly. I promised Mrs. Turnour her revenge at lottery tickets. The glazed door does not quite click behind him. Bent bolts never click. Silence. Fern drip. The pianiste waltz coming through the glass like music underwater. Georgina's hand, still held obediently down in yours, begins to shake. After, always after, the body keeps its accounts in arrears, and you stay kneeling, sewing a button she does not need onto a glove that split at the thumb weeks ago, and was changed from your own reticule in the cloakroom at 9, sewing slowly, giving her your bent grey head to look at and 1 minute of the only privacy this house has ever afforded her, the privacy of a servant's presence. And when her voice comes, it is very small and very level. Nothing happened, Miss Hart. Nothing ever does, you say around the pins. That is my whole trade, Miss Aldersey. Nothing happening every single day. A breath above you, almost a laugh. Almost. He said. She stops, starts again at the beginning like a lesson. I thought I wanted to see the illuminations. They will light them all week. You bite the thread, stand, shake out her mended flounce, and give her your arm. Bare inches, a chaperone's arm, the most licensed touch in England. Come, your mother has put out a fire, and will want to be told her party is a triumph. And it is only later, after the guests are gone and the candles are being pinched out room by room, after Mrs. Aldersey, glowing, exhausted, has said, "A triumph, Miss Hart, though we shall smell burnt fat for a week," after you have unhooked Georgina yourself, Hannah being needed below, and she has said good night to you at her door, and then, suddenly, not a thing she has ever done, taken your hand, held it hard, half a second, dropped it, gone in. It is only then, on the third-floor landing with your candle, that your own body presents its bill, and you sit down on the top stair because your knees have gone, and you shake for a while, quietly, in the dark, like a woman who has walked along a parapet and only afterwards looked down. Nothing happened tonight. Nothing will have happened forever. You held. That is all. The wall held. The morning after the party, the house smells of stale lobster, candle snuff and burnt fat, and Hannah is on her knees in the drawing-room by 6:30, scattering damp tea leaves over the carpet and sweeping them up again with everything 40 respectable people trod into it. You help her shift the furniture back into its everyday positions. You are not required to. That is exactly why you do it. Neither of you says one word about ferns. But at a certain point you both straighten up at the same moment and look, together, at the two pots standing 8 inches apart in front of the conservatory doors, and Hannah pushes them back into place with the side of her boot. 1, 2, and returns to her tea leaves. In service, that counts as a long conversation. At breakfast, Mrs. Aldersey conducts the autopsy of her triumph. Who came? Who stayed past midnight? What Mrs. Turner said about the lobster salad, and what Mrs. Turner will be saying about it by Thursday, which is not the same thing and never has been. The chafing dish is discussed. The footman's sleeve is discussed. The conservatory is not discussed because only 2 people in London know it matters, and one of them is you, and the other left early. You say only, mildly, that the conservatory doors hang loose and let in the cold, and perhaps the ironmonger's man might come at last. Mr. Aldersey, behind the Times, says, which in this house is a binding contract that nothing will happen. And Mr. Vane left early, Mrs. Aldersey says to her toast. He mentioned an engagement. Men of fashion always have an engagement, you say, and your voice comes out exactly right, flat as an ironed sheet. Georgina does not look up from her plate. Her mother pours out more tea, satisfied with her evening, her lobster, her world. It is 2 days later, in the middle of French, that Georgina lays down her pen and says, not looking at you, "Miss Hart, my flounce was not torn. It was torn when I mended it. The schoolroom clock gets through 4 seconds of ticking." "Yes," she says, in a new voice, an accounting voice, and picks up her pen and writes out the imperfect of savoir without a single fault. She's learning the grammar, not the French one. Vane calls once more that week. 15 minutes, to the mother, correct to the degree. The weather, the coming wedding, a beau. He does not look at Georgina above twice, and he does not look at you at all, which is how you know you've been promoted from furniture to opponent. A disappointed man sulks. A speculator books his loss and holds the position open, waiting for the market to move. It moves on the 7th of March, and it moves the whole city at once, because on the 7th, Princess Alexandra of Denmark lands at Gravesend and comes through London on her way to Windsor, 6 miles of streets, and London, 15 months in black, a whole city with grief cramp in its shoulders, comes out to look at her. Not thousands, not tens of thousands. The papers will quarrel afterwards over the figure, 500,000, a million more, and the quarrel will not matter because numbers stop meaning anything after the first 100,000. What comes out on the 7th of March is simply London. All of it, at once. The route comes over London Bridge and up King William Street, Mr. Aldersey says on the Thursday, with the quiet complacency of a man laying down a trump. Past the Mansion House, along Cheapside, past St. Paul's, and so west to Paddington. The corner house of our court has first-floor windows on King William Street, and the tenant discounts his paper through me and owes me a civility. There will be a window for the ladies. A pause. I have asked Pemble as well. A man who spends his days engrossing marriage settlements may as well see a marriage the whole country is settled on. Which is how, at 8 o'clock on the morning of Saturday the 7th of March, 1863, you come to be climbing a dark counting-house staircase in the city with Georgina's gloved hand on your arm. You have never seen the city like this. Nobody has ever seen the city like this. Every shop front on the route is boarded over, and the boards hung with crimson cloth. Stands of raw yellow timber have gone up against the churches, seats at a guinea, at 2 guineas, hammered together in a week by carpenters working by torchlight. Danish flags, white cross on red, hang from windows that have never hung out anything but a fire bucket. Hawkers are selling medals with the princess's face guessed at, favours in red and white, 2-penny books of her life she would not recognise a page of, and below your borrowed window, packed from shop front to shop front, standing on cellar flaps on railings on one another's feet is the crowd. By 9 you cannot see the paving anywhere. By 11, King William Street is not a street. It is a single animal wearing 80,000 hats, and it steams in the March cold like a horse. You stand at the first-floor window with Georgina and her mother, and the tenant's clerks perch on the ledge of the window beside it, and Mr. Pemble stands behind you all at a correct distance, saying nothing, in the way you are beginning to understand is not emptiness but economy. Waiting. You watch the crowd the way you have learned to watch everything, and it frightens you, professionally. In a drawing room, everyone can be seen. That is the whole principle of drawing rooms. Down there nobody can be seen and nobody can move, and when the mass shifts, it shifts like water in a pail. All of it. Helplessly. Twice before noon you watch a woman faint below and get passed out over the crowd's heads, hand to hand, limp as washing, to the police at the barrier. The crowd cheers her, both times. It has been waiting 3 hours. It cheers everything. Then, far off toward the river, a sound begins. You've heard crowds before. You've never heard this. It starts as weather, a pressure on the ear more than a noise, and it comes up the street the way the tide comes through bridge arches, gathering. And the strange thing, the thing you will never forget, is that you can watch it travel. Hats coming off in a wave, handkerchiefs breaking out like foam along the shop fronts, and the roar arriving with it, through the soles of your feet, through the window glass, through the timbers of the house, a sound with no anger in it and no words in it, just release. 15 months of black crepe, torn off a whole city in one breath. Lifeguards first, breastplates throwing back the grey light, horses shying at the noise, then carriages, 6 of them, full of dignities you cannot name, and then, in an open carriage, small under the enormous sound, a girl in a white bonnet, 18 years old, seasick in the Channel 3 days ago, being looked at in this 1 hour by more human beings than have ever looked at one girl at one time in the history of the world. Beside you, Georgina has gone very still, her gloves on the sill. "She is my age," she says under the roar, and nobody hears her but you. You look down at the white bonnet and you think, with the part of your mind that keeps the accounts, there is the marriage market at its apex. A princess of Denmark, courted by treaty and telegraph, priced by chancelleries, inspected by ambassadors, and never once in her whole life alone. The most chaperoned girl in Europe, and the whole city roaring at her, and not one soul in 100,000 asking whether she slept last night, or what she left behind in Copenhagen, or whether her stays are cutting her under all that bonnet load of joy. "Why do they roar so?" Georgina says. "They cannot even see her face from here." It is Mr. Pemble who answers, from behind you, in his plain conveyancing voice, as though someone had asked him about a lease. They are not cheering her face, they are cheering a promise. It is the only security everyone in the street can hold at once. Georgina turns and looks at him. It is not a long look, but you keep the accounts and you enter it. The carriage passes. The roar goes with it, rolling away up Cheapside like a wave running down a beach, and the crowd below begins very slowly to become people again. Mr. Aldersey appears from the inner office, where he has spent the morning pricing consols against a wedding. The clerks come in off the ledge. Somebody produces sherry. You will remember the roar. On Tuesday you will learn what it sounds like when it stops being joy. On the 10th of March, the Prince of Wales marries Alexandra of Denmark in St. George's Chapel at Windsor, before the smallest congregation ever squeezed into the biggest occasion, with the Queen watching from a gallery above the altar, in black, alone, like a ghost at her own son's feast. That is at Windsor. London is not invited, so London holds its own wedding in the streets. The bells begin at 8 in the morning and do not properly stop all day. The shops shut by common consent, a holiday no parliament ever declared. Guns fire their salutes in the parks at noon, flat hard claps rolling over Bayswater, and Hannah comes up from the area wearing a red and white favour the size of a cabbage, and even Mrs. Aldersey pretends not to see it. The whole day has the loose, bright, dangerous feel of a school let out, and at night London lights itself on fire, on purpose. Every public building, every club, every insurance office and draper and gin palace has spent a month rigging its front with gas, stars, crowns, Prince of Wales feathers, the initials of the young pair intertwined in flames of pink and white and violet, transparencies the size of mainsails lit from behind. The gas companies have laid special mains for it. It is to be the greatest illumination in the history of the capital, and every single one of the 2 million people not invited to Windsor has privately decided to walk out and see it. Mr. Aldersey declines at once. "I have seen the city lit," he says. "I prefer its solvent. Take Pemble. He has shoulders." So it is Mrs. Aldersey, Georgina, you, Henry Colfax, pink and proud, appointed carrier of wraps, and Mr. Pemble in the barouche, rolling south for Oxford Street at 8:30 in the evening. The carriage lasts 40 minutes. Somewhere short of the Marble Arch, the traffic simply sets, like mortar, cab against carriage against omnibus, whips idle, coachman resigned, and after 20 minutes of not moving, Mrs. Aldersey does the arithmetic and announces that they will walk. An announcement so unlike her that you understand suddenly that she too was young once, in some other reign, and that 15 months of black has been long for everyone. The coachman is given his orders, you go down into the crowd. And when I say crowd, I need you to understand what that word means on the night of the 10th of March, 1863. This is not a theatre crowd, not a market day crush, not even Saturday's procession, which was packed but penned. This is every soul in the widest city on earth walking out at once in the dark toward the same light. For the first mile it is merely thick, a slow warm river of hats and shawls smelling of gas and orange peel and wet wool, everyone good-tempered, everyone shuffling. Then the streams begin to meet. You feel the change through your boots before you understand it. The pavement stops being a place you walk and becomes a place you are stood, and the crowd stops being people and becomes pressure. At the mouth of Regent Circus, two rivers of human beings run into each other at an angle, with more arriving behind each of them every minute from streets that cannot know what they are feeding, and the whole mass locks, the way a crowd locks, all at once, with no signal. Your feet leave the ground, not far, an inch. You, a grown woman in stout boots, are carried upright, packed, your arms pinned to your sides by the simple arithmetic of bodies, and there is nothing to be done about it. Nothing at all. And this is the moment you understand with your skin what you understood on Saturday with your eyes. A drawing room is dangerous because everyone is watching. A crowd is dangerous because no one is. Georgina is 3 bodies away. 3. You can see the trimming of her bonnet and one shoulder, and between you are a fat man in a beaver hat and 2 frightened shop lads, and her crinoline, 5 feet of watch-spring steel built for a ballroom, is being pressed out of its shape. You can hear the hoops creak. A hooped woman who goes down in a crush goes down inside a folding cage and does not get up. Mr. Pemble, it is your voice, but you've never heard it before, flat and hard as a drill sergeant's, and Mr. Arthur Pemble, solicitor of Bedford Row, who cannot make 15 minutes small talk in a drawing-room to save his life, puts his back against the fat man, braces his boots on the curbstone, and becomes architecture. It is the most astonishing physical fact you've ever witnessed. He does not push. Pushing is what kills. He plants, shoulders spread, one arm making a roof beam over Georgina and the other reaching back for Mrs. Aldersey, and he holds 4 square feet of London still while the river grinds past. And Henry Colfax, God bless his pink face, catches the idea and plants himself likewise on the other side, and inside the little coffer-dam of their coats the women of your party stand and breathe. Beside you, pinned upright between you and the shop lads, a girl faints. A shop girl, 17 perhaps, out to see the lights in her Sunday bonnet, and she goes out like a candle, standing up, because there is no room to fall, her head lolling on the fat man's sleeve, and your right hand is already in your reticule, because it is always already in your reticule, working the stopper out of the salve volatile with your thumb, and you get the little bottle under her nose one-handed, and she comes back with a jerk and a gasp of ammonia and terror and starts to cry, which is good. Crying means breathing. You cannot fall, you tell her, close, in the voice you use for frightened creatures. That is the whole of it. Whatever happens, you do not go down, she nods, hiccuping. You keep the bottle under her nose until her knees come back. It takes Pemble and Henry half an hour to work the party sideways, doorway by doorway out of the current, not fighting it, ferrying across it, the way a waterman crosses a tide, all angle and patience. And then there is a draper's doorway, deep with a stone step up, and you are all on it, above the flood, packed against the shutters, and nobody says anything for a while. The gas is very beautiful. That is the mad thing. Over the road, a great star of white flame hisses and trembles against the black, with the initials of 2 royal children burning inside it, and beneath it the crowd pours and pours and pours, and Georgina stands in the circle of her mother's arm with her bonnet crushed flat on one side, watching it, and her lips are not counting. Past counting. Some fears have no numbers. You get home at 2 in the morning, the last mile on foot through emptying streets littered with trodden favours, dead torches, and one child's boot, upright, alone, in the middle of the Westbourne Grove, which you will see for years when you close your eyes. The coachman and the carriage arrive mysteriously at 3. Nobody is scolded. Everybody is alive. It takes the newspapers 3 days to finish counting the night. 6 people crushed to death in the crowds of the city by the Mansion House on London Bridge. 6 who walked out to see the lights of a wedding and were stood on by London until they stopped. Women among them. The Times is grave about the arrangements. The illuminations, everyone agrees, were the finest ever seen. On the 4th morning, Mrs. Aldersey folds the paper, lays it beside her plate, and looks at you across the breakfast things. Now you know what a London crowd is, Miss Hart. It is a drawing room with the rules taken out. In here, everyone watches everyone, and you may call it a cage, and girls do call it cage, and they are not wrong. Out there is what there is instead of the cage. She stands, smooths her skirts, takes up her lists. The season opens after Easter. Now you know. Now get back to work. You go back to work. But that night you enter one line in the accounts, under the date, and you sit and look at it a long time before you put out the candle. Mem. The rules are hateful, and the rules are a handrail. Both things are true. Hold both. The season of 1863 comes in exactly as Mrs. Escombe prophesied at the bazaar. The greatest marriage market in 20 years. Every family that hung back last spring out of respect comes up to town at once, and by May the squares are full. The park is a slow, glittering jam of carriages every afternoon at 5, and there are 3 balls a week to be watched through, and sometimes 4. The papers have already named it the Alexandra season. There's an Alexandra bonnet and an Alexandra jacket and an Alexandra curl, worn low because the princess wears hers so, and Marshall and Snellgrove cannot keep Danish red in the shop. In June, Georgina is presented. At one of the crowded drawing rooms the young Princess of Wales holds at St. James's in the Queen's stead, the Queen being still walled up at Osborne in her black. Presentation means court dress. Ostrich feathers in the hair, lappets, a train of such length and cost that it must be rehearsed with, and finally swept backwards from the royal presence without falling over it. An operation Georgina practices in the drawing-room for a week with the tablecloth pinned to her shoulders, while you read the instructions aloud like artillery drill. The mall on the day is a solid queue of carriages 4 hours long. Ladies faint in the crush of the presence chamber, and are carried out with their feathers bent. And Georgina comes home at last, creased, glowing, starving, having curtsied for 9 seconds to a girl 1 year older than herself, and eats cold beef in her court plumes at the kitchen table, while Hannah and the cook stand around her like worshippers. That is what the top of the world looks like in 1863, 9 seconds, and cold beef after. You, meanwhile, have become good at your trade. It is strange to feel it happen. The bench of chaperones at a ball is a guild, and you have served your apprenticeship in it. You know its precedences, its Freemasonry, which dowagers trade intelligence honestly, and which retail it with interest added. You can read a ballroom now the way Mr. Aldersey reads a bill list, where every couple is, which doors stand open, which conservatory has been left unlit, and above all where Georgina is, always without looking, the way you know where your own hands are. Twice more in May and in June. You feel a moment being arranged around her. A carriage party to Richmond proposed a little too smoothly. A supper-room chair shuffled a little too well. And twice you're simply standing in the moment before it forms, dull as furniture, asking about a flounce. That is the job now, not drama, weather watching. Vane is everywhere that season, and he is perfect. He dances with Georgina exactly once an evening, never more, correct as a clock striking. Watching him work the great rooms, established, expected, welcome everywhere, £1,200 in debt, you understand at last why Mrs. Escombe called the second kind of danger the kind that ends girls. There is nothing to see. There is never going to be anything to see. There is only patience, and patience is invisible. The hot ball at the end of June is the one you will remember. 60 couples, 300 candles, every window shut against the night air on the theory that night air kills. The room like the inside of a kiln, smelling of wax and crushed flowers and scorched dust. Between the 9th dance and the 10th, Georgina's little pencil, the tiny thing on its silk cord, 2 inches of cedar, snaps in half in her gloved fingers, exactly as her mother always said pencils do. And Mr. Frederick Vane is there before the 2 halves reach her palm. You never see him cross the room. His kind never cross rooms. They are simply suddenly adjacent. And his own pencil is already out, gold, a propelling pencil that cost more than Hannah earns in a quarter, unscrewed, offered on his open hand with the smallest bow in the world. Because a girl without a pencil at a ball must let a gentleman write on her card with his own, and then his pencil has touched her evening, and she owes him a small warm debt of rescue, and small warm debts are the rungs his kind climb by. Your hand comes between them with 2 inches of cedar and lead in it. Miss Aldersey keeps a spare, you say. 1 farthing pencil, held out on a chaperone's grey glove in the middle of the hottest ball of the season. Vane looks at it, then at you, and for the first time in 9 months of watching him, you see all the way to the bottom of his eyes, and there is nothing down there but arithmetic, and the arithmetic is finishing. Of course she does, he says softly, and screws the gold pencil shut and bows and goes away to make Mrs. Turnow laugh. It is the last thing he ever says to either of you. The end, when it comes in July, does not come from you. It comes, like everything in his world, from paper. Mrs. Escombe tells you at Welbeck Street, over strong tea, with the Times folded to the announcements column, and her black-gloved finger on a marriage, his Shropshire uncle, 61 years of age, and in excellent health, and married at Ludlow to a widow of 39, in excellent health. Attend, Miss Hart, because this is the whole of political economy in one lesson, she pours out. For 6 years that man has lived 300 a year beyond his allowance, and the difference has been lent to him quarterly against his expectations. His expectations were an old man's will. There is now a young wife between him and the will, and by Christmas, I do not doubt, something in a cradle between him and it too. The expectation is dead, and paper lent against a dead expectation is not renewed. They refuse him within the fortnight. You hear it in pieces, the way the bench hears everything. The horse gone to Tattersall's, the rooms in Ryder Street to let by August, £110 a year of emptiness, the tailor unpaid since 1859, on the stair at last with the writ, now that there is nothing left to be patient for, and then the packet from Folkestone, and gone. Boulogne, says Mrs. Escombe, when you ask where. Boulogne's full of charming men. It is where expectations go when they die. He will dine out on his manners for 30 years, in a coat 1 season old, watching the boat come in. She stirs her tea. You see how it ends, Miss Hart. Everybody in this story banks somewhere. A girl banks her reputation, and may not be overdrawn 1 hour. He banked an old man's heartbeat. A reputation is a bank that allows no overdraft, but at least it is a bank that cannot marry a widow of 39. You laugh. You're not proud of it. You laugh anyway into your tea, and the dragon of Welbeck Street permits herself one short dry sound that is her whole store of mirth, and pours you another cup, and that is the obituary of Mr. Frederick Vane. Georgina hears of it as everyone hears of everything, in a drawing-room sideways. You're watching her when the name goes by, dressed in somebody's arch little sentence about Boulogne. She goes on winding wool. Her face does nothing at all. She has learned, your ward, she has learned. And only that night does the knock come at your attic door, which has never once been knocked on in 10 months, and Georgina Aldersey stands on the servants' landing in her wrapper and plate, holding the pen wiper. 5 shillings at the bazaar for Lancashire, to keep for me until I have earned it. She has kept it in a glove box for 7 months, and neither of you has ever said its name aloud. You burn things, I think, she says. I have heard that companions do. The pen wiper cost 5 shillings and burns like a farthing's worth of felt, which is what it is. You hold it over the candle flame by its corner, and the two of you watch it go brown and curl and become nothing that ever existed, and the little room fills with the honest stink of scorched wool. There was no pen wiper, she says, watching. There never is. And then, against every law of the house, the daughter of the family sits down on the end of a companion's iron bed in the servant story at 11 o'clock at night, and asks the question she has carried up 3 flights in the dark. Was it me? At all? There are kind lies for this, and you know them all, and she would hear every one of them for what it was. So you give her the truth, and the truth is cheap and hard like the pencil. He wanted £8,000. You were the door it lived behind. He was good at doors. You let that sit, and then, that is not a thing wrong with you, Miss Aldersey. It is a thing wrong with the market. You are not the first girl to mistake a man looking at her fortune for a man looking at her, because the market has made the two looks identical, and pays its way by keeping them so. Your fault would begin only on the day you knew it and would not see it. She is quiet a long time. The candle spits. 10 months ago she would have cried, and it would have meant less. Mr. Pemble, she says at last at the door, much too carelessly, explained the whole law of settlements to me on Thursday, at Mamma's tea, in front of everyone for 20 minutes because I asked. And nobody has ever supposed I could understand anything before. And she's gone down the dark stairs, candle shadow swinging before you can enter anything in the accounts at all except mem, nothing, happening. N.B. Watch it happen. At the end of July, with the season folding up around them like a tent, the whole cast of your year goes down to Sydenham for the great charity fete at the Crystal Palace, in aid, still, again, always, of the Lancashire operatives, who are hungry yet, though the worst is past. A shilling special train from Victoria, half an hour of chimney pots, and then, suddenly, green, and then the thing itself on its hilltop, and even now, even after your London year, it stops your breath. Paxton's Palace of Glass, the great building that stood in Hyde Park for the exhibition of 1851, taken down pane by pane and rebuilt bigger on Sydenham Hill in 1854, 1,600 feet of it. A cathedral with nothing in its windows but sky. This Saturday, it holds 40,000 Londoners at a shilling a head for Lancashire. Mrs. Escombe comes because a fate is intelligence. Mr. Pemble comes, mitten deep in the fund since December. The Colfaxes come entire, Henry now openly and hopelessly attached to his own cousin, following her through the courts loaded with her parasol, 2 shawls and a guidebook. A man in love, observes Mrs. Escombe watching him pass, is a pack mule with a future. And on the islands in the park below the terraces, standing hip-deep in ferns beside the lake, are the monsters, life-size beasts of brick and iron and stucco, dinosaurs, the first ever built in the world, each one big as a dray and painted like a lizard, made by Mr. Waterhouse Hawkins with the scientific gentleman advising. On the New Year's Eve, before the palace opened, 21 gentlemen sat down to dinner at a table laid inside the mould of the iguanodon itself. 8 courses, speeches, inside the standing beast. That is true. That happened. This is a city that dines inside its own monsters and calls it science. Georgina stands at the rail a long time, looking at the iguanodon. How does the water, she begins, of the fountains beyond, and catches herself and laughs. I was about to ask how it knows. Gravity knows, says Mr. Pemble. And then, because she turns to him and waits, he actually tells her. The 2 great water towers, one at each end of the palace, built by Mr. Brunel after the first pair failed. The engines that spend all morning pumping thousands of tons of water uphill into the tanks, and then the taps opened, and the whole afternoon's glory nothing but the morning's work coming back downhill through 11,000 jets, some of them flung 250 feet into the air. Work stored up, he says, and spent all at once and looking like magic to everyone who did not see the pumping. Then he stops, appalled at himself having talked for 4 minutes together. You explain things, Georgina says, as though I could understand them. Mr. Pember looks at her with honest surprise. You do understand them. And Georgina Aldersey looks at a stooped solicitor of 1:30 the way she once looked at an envelope machine, and you, 3 feet behind with your reticule, keep the accounts and say nothing, and file it under nothing happening. Later, while the fountains play, you stand with Mrs. Escombe on the upper terrace, and this is the hour of that whole summer you will keep the longest. Because from the terraces of the Crystal Palace you can see the world. Northward, 7 miles off, London lies under its everlasting brown-grey lid of smoke, a floor of roofs running out of sight, the dome of St. Paul's ride in the haze like a bubble in tea. You can find, if you work at it, the towers of Westminster, the line of the river by its masts, and southward, when you turn, there is none of it. Kent and Surrey, green and gold, hop gardens and harvest weather and blue hills at the edge of sight. Everything you came from, one way, everything you came to, the other, one turn of the head, turn, Last October, you hear yourself say, I asked myself a question. If everyone watches everyone and nobody may ever be alone, who in that whole city is free? Mrs. Escombe stands with both hands on her cane looking at London for so long you think she has chosen not to hear. Wrong question, she says at last. Nobody is free, Miss Hart. The Queen is the least free woman in the Empire. She cannot so much as grieve without the newspapers auditing it. The little princess was cheered by 1,000,000 people who would not let her walk one street of that route alone. Your Georgina lives behind 24 hooks and a mother. Your Mr. Vane was chained his whole charming life to a tailor's ledger and an old man's pulse. I have been at liberty 30 years, and my liberty is 2 rooms over a staymaker and the price of coals. There are no free people, child. There are free minutes, 4 or 5 at a time, stolen and spent at once, and never banked. I had some once on a horse in Portugal before you were born. I remember every one of them. The bright eyes come round to you, lamp in a long corridor. You have had some, I think. Black ice, and an empty river of it, and the fen wind. 4 minutes, you say. On the Serpentine, in January. Well then, you are richer than the Queen. She turns back to the view, to the smoke-lidded floor of roofs where 2,000,000 people are pricing one another this minute in 10,000 rooms. Look at it. From here you can see the whole engine, and not one face. You're barely a cog in that, Miss Hart. So am I. So is the Lord Mayor. But you are here. You are in it. You held one small gate of it shut all winter. And one girl will get one life instead of another because of it. That is not nothing. In my ledger, that is the whole of the sum. The cane comes down once like a full stop. Guard the minutes, the years will guard themselves. Below you the great fountains stand up all at once against the green, the morning's stored work spending itself in the sun, and the crowd of 40,000 sighs like one creature, and somewhere down there Georgina is asking Mr. Pemble a question, and being answered as though she could understand, which is, you have come to believe, the rarest form of love on offer in England in 1863. In the first week of September, Mr. Arthur Pemble calls at Porchester Terrace at 11 o'clock in the morning in a coat so new it still smells of the tailor's iron, and asks for Mr. Aldersey, and is shown into the study, and the door is shut. Mark that, because you have a year of doors in you now. A man who wishes to dispose of his whole life goes into a room with another man, and the door closes, and that is business. A girl may not be behind a closed door for 4 minutes to save her soul. The rule was never about doors, the rule was about who owns what is behind them. The door stays shut for 50 minutes. Hannah finds reasons to polish the hall twice, and then the back drawing-room, with the folding doors standing open to the front one, and Mrs. Aldersey arranging chrysanthemums at the far table with the terrible deafness of a mother hearing everything, and you at the window with your needlework furniture one more time, and Georgina on the sofa with her hands folded, and Mr. Pemble standing in front of her, having already got up out of 2 chairs. Miss Aldersey, I'm not a fluent man. In court I hire one. Nobody laughs. He had not meant it as a joke. He goes on doggedly, like a man wading a river he has surveyed and knows to be crossable. I have 900 a year, and a house in Queen Square that wants somebody in it, and the intention of being kind to you for the rest of my life. I do not offer you. He gestures, taking in somehow the whole vanish season, the candles, the gold pencils, the beautiful men. That. I am aware of it. I would rather be refused this morning than be accepted out of politeness and watched being regretted for 40 years. That is all I have to say. It took me 3 weeks to get it by heart. Silence. The chrysanthemums have stopped rustling, and Georgina looks past him, across the room, to you. One heartbeat, exactly as in a ballroom in February, except that it is September, and she is asking, and you keep your face as still and shut as a linen press, because this is the one room she must cross with nobody walking in front of her. The whole year was for this, not to choose for her, to keep the road clear until she could choose in daylight. Georgina looks back at Mr. Pemble. You explained the fountains to me, she says. He blinks. I? Yes. Yes, says Georgina Aldersey. That is my answer. Then chrysanthemums everywhere, and Mrs. Aldersey has crossed the room at a speed you would not have credited, and Hannah is somehow in the doorway beaming with a duster in her hand, and Mr. Arthur Pemble stands in the middle of it all wearing the face of a man whose case has been decided beyond appeal, and Georgina is laughing the scale-run laugh, and you sit by the window and sew 3 stitches that hold nothing to nothing very carefully until your eyes agree to behave. The pasteboard tide comes in for a week. Cards on the salver, morning and afternoon, corners turned down by every hand in Bayswater. Mrs. Turnour first of all, breathless, who has known it since Easter, she says, saw it coming at the Crystal Palace, practically arranged it, and will tell everyone so for a month, and does, and it is the most useful lie in Bayswater, because news needs a herald and Mrs. Turnour works cheap, and on the Thursday a brooch you know by its panel stops at number 14, and Lady Havisham's footman carries her ladyship's cards up the steps of a house she has not been at home to in 11 months. A marriage in Queen Square with 900 a year having its own gravity. Mrs. Aldersey is in the morning room. The hall can hear her perfectly well. Not at home. Snap. Like a small door closing. The silent coin of last October, repaid in full in the same currency at 11 months' interest. And some of the loudest events of this year, exactly as promised, made entirely of pasteboard. The settlements take 3 weeks, and you learn more law in them than your father learned in a lifetime of tithe disputes. Mr. Pemble will not draft his own. A man should not hold the pen on a deed he profits by, and sends the business to another firm in Bedford Row, and then inspects what comes back like an enemy. And here is what the parchment must do, and why there is parchment at all. In the year 1863, on the day a woman says 4 words in a church, everything she owns stops being hers. Everything. Her money, her furniture, her earnings if she has any, her gloves, the brush in her hand, all of it passes to her husband by operation of law absolutely, and no kindness of his changes the law a particle, unless a wall is built first. The wall is called a settlement. £8,000 fenced off in trust before the wedding. Mr. Aldersey and one other standing trustee. The income to Georgina's separate use. Her signature alone. Her pin money quarterly. Her fortune her own behind parchment ramparts that not even her husband can cross. You have spent a year being a wall around this girl, and you end the year watching clerks engross a permanent one, on skins, in a fair round hand. And it is the strangest relief you've ever felt, to be superseded by a document. Mr. Aldersey signs it at his study table precisely twice. Belief is the collateral, Miss Hart, he says, sanding the wet ink. All the rest is arithmetic. But I will tell you a bill-broker's secret. He looks up, mild and grey. Parchment is a great comfort. The word trousseau, by the way, is Old French too, like the other one. It means a little bundle. Everything a woman can carry out of one life into the next, tied up small. 6 centuries of language, and they never once pretended it was more than luggage. Georgina's little bundle takes a month and fills 9 trunks. 12 of everything marked in ink, and Hannah sewing name tapes by lamplight. Georgina Pemble, Georgina Pemble, the new name practiced 100 times by needle before its owner has written it once. Gloves from Marshall and Snellgrove by the dozen, 1 and 9pence the pair, size 6 1/4, and you sit one whole evening with the glove box on your knees and double stitch every left thumb seam yourself, all 12 pairs, because she grips with her left when she laughs, and she is going somewhere beyond the reach of your reticule. Hannah goes with her. Mrs. Aldersey settles it in October. Lady's maid, £16 a year. A proper bedroom with a proper fire. You find her on the area steps that evening, sitting with her apron over her hands, looking at the news the way Fen people look at everything, flat and level and long. Queen Square, she says at last. That's a step for Swaffham. And then standing, brushing down. Your Fen country. You'll manage. And you know where I'm kept now, same as I know where you'll be. We'd better stick together then. 11 words with the whole of your first London year inside them, and she goes down to her grates, and you go up to your accounts, and that is how her kind and your kind say everything they mean. The 20th of October, 1863, comes in on the first hard frost of the autumn, a Tuesday, with the sky over Porchester Terrace scoured blue, and every slate in Bayswater glittering. You are up at 5:30. You have dressed this girl some 180 times by now, by your ledger. But this morning wants a different arithmetic, and it begins with hair. While Hannah heats the irons, you unwrap the one beautiful thing you own, ivory-backed, silver-initialed, your mother's. And you brush out Georgina's hair with it by candlelight, 50 strokes, a dead rector's dead wife riding in silver through the brightest hair in Bayswater, 50 times, while the frost flowers melt off the window, and neither of you says anything at all, and it is the closest thing to church that happens all that morning, including the church. Then the armour, one last time. Chemise, stays, the cage, the petticoats, the dress going over her raised arms, the same diving bell descent as 100 mornings of this year, only white now, white silk with orange blossom at the hem, and the 24 hooks up the back which you fasten yourself. Hannah being wanted for flowers, every one of them, 1 to 24, the last time in this life you will ever hook this particular girl into this particular armour. The veil, the wreath, and then, at 10 minutes to 9, disaster on schedule. The button at her right glove wrist hanging by a thread, because some things are constitutional. Out of the reticule, needle case, white silk, the twist of paper with 5 pearl buttons left of the 6, one being sewn forever into the evening of the 3rd of March. On goes another, 4 stitches and an anchor knot, her hand held down at her side like a child's at a nurse. You're hard on your things, you say, around the thread. I know, says Georgina Aldersey on the last morning of that name. You have always carried spares. St. James's Church, Paddington, at 10:30, before noon, because the law of England licenses marriage only in the forenoon, as though the state itself did not trust anybody's intentions after lunch. Mr. Aldersey gives her away, grey and precise, doing behind his eyes the only sum he has ever had trouble carrying. Mrs. Colfax weeps comfortably from the second pew, as she has wept at every wedding in Bayswater for 30 years. Henry ushers, pink and proud with his cousin in his direct line of sight for the entire service, an arrangement nobody believes accidental. Mrs. Escombe sits at the aisle's end in her black silk, cane-planted, still as an idol, missing nothing. Mrs. Turner is making memoranda with her whole face, and far at the back in the cheap pews, in grey merino with white collar and cuffs, sits the furniture watching. You are too far away to hear the vows. It does not matter in the least. You have the old skill. You can stand across any ballroom in England and know exactly how safe Georgina feels by watching her mouth. You stand across a church instead. Her lips move, slow and steady. I, Georgina, and they are not counting. Not once. 11 months you have watched that mouth do its secret 1, 2, 3 against the fright. And here, at the one moment of her life with the whole of England's machinery aimed straight at her, 200 eyes, one door, no retreat, nothing. Nothing in the man in front of her requires to be counted into obedience. The words go at their own pace and are meant. That is the whole verdict, and you have it before the ring is on. Chaperon. A little hood. The falconer's leather that keeps the wild thing quiet on the glove in the dark until the moment her master chooses. Somewhere in the vestry a register is signing away the need of you. And this, it turns out, was always the meaning of the hood. The only meaning that excuses the leather and the dark at all. That when it comes off here, in daylight, in the open, in safety. And the hawk goes up off the glove with the whole sky to her, and nobody reaches to stop her, and the fowler with his nets took the boat for Boulogne months ago. The bells ring her out. Georgina Pum comes down the steps of St. James's on her husband's arm into the frost-bright morning, and the little of London gather on the pavement, crossing sweeper, errand boys, 2 old women who attend all weddings on principle, cheers its small cheer, and she laughs the skell-run laugh at the whole street, gloves and all. At the wedding breakfast you eat cake at the foot of the table and are for 1 hour gloriously nobody, and at 2 o'clock at the carriage door in her going-away dress, Alexandra blue of course, the whole year is sown through with that colour. Georgina turns back on the step, works something off her wrist and presses it into your hand. The ball tablets, the little ivory leaves worn silky with a season's pencillings, the silver pin and the farthing pencil on its ribbon. The one you put there 13 months ago. I shan't dance with anyone I haven't married now, she says. Keep the accounts, Miss Hart. And she takes your hand, the trick that is hers alone, held hard half a second. Only this time it's a whole second, and a look with 11 months in it. And then the step, the door, the whip, and gone. Hooves ringing away down Porchester Terrace toward Queen Square, and the plane trees still thin as walking sticks, letting go their last leaves over the carriage like a city's worth of thrown rice. Number 14 goes quiet the way a theatre goes quiet. The house does not mourn. There's nothing to mourn. It has done magnificently the one thing it spent 18 years preparing to do. But a headquarters after the victory is a strange, slack place. The piano is shut. The dancing master's Wednesdays are over. The blue room stands done, swept, shrouded, closed. And Hannah's successor at the grates is a small silent girl from Kilburn who does her work well enough and is not fen country, and the difference is a stone in your chest at 6:30 every morning. One evening in November you come into the morning room at dusk and find Mrs. Aldersey standing at the window with no list in her hand. It is the no list you notice. In 14 months you've never once seen her hands empty. 18 years, Miss Hart, she says to the glass. I began that campaign when she was in the cradle. Every governess, every master, every card on every salver. 18 years. A long pause, the street going dark outside. And it has ended exactly as I planned, and better than I hoped, and nobody warned you that the day after Waterloo the General is out of work. Then her spine recollects itself, and the ledger comes back into her voice like a lamp being turned up. You will be wanting a character. I shall write you one that blisters the page, which, from Mrs. Aldersey, is love, and you both know it, and neither of you says so because that too is the trade. The character does its work. Mrs. Escombe, naturally, has had the next situation on her books since August. A family in Gloucester Square, Lady Havisham's own square, which will be its own quiet entertainment, with 2 daughters, 17 and 15, to bring out one after the other. £30 a year, to begin in January. Twice the guns and a £5 rise, says the Dragon of Welbeck Street. You will become dear, Miss Hart. Dragons appreciate. It is the one thing we do that the funds do not. And on her staircase, one afternoon in December, you pass a girl coming down. Grey merino, white collar and cuffs. 23 perhaps. A clergyman's daughter by every stitch of her. Chilblains and terrified eyes, clutching her reticule like a hymn book, down from her first audience, on her way to her first situation, 14 months behind you on a road you could now walk blind. You know her whole winter at one look. You stop her on the landing to her visible alarm, and you say what there is to say. Keep a needle case in your bag, white thread and black, spare buttons, pearl, glove size, 6 of them, and a pencil. She stares at you. You will understand each of them by Easter, you say. It gets easier. Which is a lie and the truth tied up in one little bundle. Like everything else that gets carried out of one life into another. And you climb on up to your tea. On the quiet evenings of that last December, when the fires are banked and the house has stopped its ticking, you sit by the window of the little back parlour where you've eaten 400 solitary breakfasts, with the accounts book on your knee, and you watch Porchester Terrace go dark and you make up the year. Georgina comes to Sunday dinner twice a month from Queen Square, and laughs at her own table now, and is learning household books with her mother's old Tuesday rigor turned loose on butchers of her own. And once, going out to the carriage, she took your arm on the steps, took it, the chaperone's arm, from the other side, and neither of you remarked upon it. Hannah writes, spelling by main force, a letter that takes 2 candles to decode and is worth both. The Queen Square kitchen warm, the Mrs. learning, Mr. P. No trouble at all. Come spring you are to visit, signed your obedient friend H. Prout. The whole of Norfolk in the crossing of the T's. Henry Colfax's engagement to his cousin is announced at Christmas, astonishing no one alive. Mrs. Turnauer has known it since Easter. Mrs. Escombe adds her 31st year to the Black Book. Somewhere in Boulogne, a man with beautiful manners, in a coat 1 season old, is watching the packet come in, patient as ever, and the tailors of 2 nations have his address, and even now you would lay money. No one can say a word against him. The Queen keeps her black at Osborne. She will keep it, though nobody standing in 1863 would credit it for the rest of her long life. And at number 14 the ironmonger's man came at last in November, and the conservatory bolt seats home now with a click you can hear from the passage. The stable door of Bayswater, mended as stable doors are, in the winter after the horse. And the question, October's question, the stone under the whole year's carpet. If everyone watches everyone, who is free? You have the long answer now, and it is this: nobody. And the question was wrong. The Queen is not free, who may do exactly as she pleases and pleases to sit in the dark. The Princess is not free, whom 1,000,000 people cheered along 6 miles of street, and not one of them would have let her walk it alone. Georgina was not free behind her 24 hooks, and is not free now behind her parchment ramparts, only safer, which is a different word. Vane was never free a day in his life. Mrs. Aldersey is not free, nor Mrs. Escombe in her 2 rooms, nor Hannah, nor you. There are no free people in this story, and there were never going to be, in a city where every soul is collateral for some other soul's credit. But there are free minutes, 4 on black ice before the crowds come, 1 behind a kneeling hem in a gaslit conservatory, bought with a needle and given to a frightened girl. Half a second of a hand held hard at a bedroom door, a whole second of it at a carriage step, an hour of being gloriously nobody at the foot of a wedding table. They cannot be banked, and they cannot be bequeathed, and they are the only currency in England that no one can call in. Freedom in the year 1863 is contraband. It moves in minutes, palm to palm, between people who keep each other's secrets. You have received some, you have given some. Write that at the foot of the year and rule it off. The trade was never all guarding. One thing more, before the candle, and you cannot know it, so I will hold it for you. You do not yet know that the street your employer steers by will break. That 3 springs from now, on a morning in May, the corner house itself, Overend and Gurney, the lighthouse of Lombard Street, the name that means safety the way the Queen's head on a shilling means silver, will stop payment and shut its doors, and the city will stand white-faced in King William Street where the wedding crowd stood, and the country will get 1 whole Friday of learning what you learned in 14 months of drawing rooms, that credit and character are the same word in different coats, that the chain holds because everyone believes it holds, that belief is the collateral, and belief can die of a rumour in an afternoon. Mr. Aldersey does not know it, doing his precise grey sums 3 doors away. Nobody knows it. Tonight, in December 1863, everyone still believes, and the great chain of promises lies quiet over London like the frost. Let them believe. It is not your ledger. Yours is ruled off, and it balances. Take the candle up the 3 flights 1 more time. The attic is cold. The attic was always cold. You're due your fire now, November being long past, and most nights you save it anyway, out of habit, out of Suffolk, out of the deep fen conviction that warmth spent on oneself wants a second opinion. Under the bed, the tin trunk, corded already, everything you own, and it comes to more than it did. The brush with the silver initials, the letter of character that blisters the page. A book of ivory leaves with a farthing pencil, worth nothing, worth the year. £4.11 has become £9 odd. You have done the sum. You are your father's daughter. And there are £30 a year to come, and 2 new girls across the park who do not know yet that they cannot be dressed without witnesses, and all the Octobers stretching out ahead, other landings, other gloves, other bent bolts that nobody sends for the man about. The same as last year, the same as next year, the same as all the grey mornings stretching out ahead, and you find, lying down in the dark, that the prospect has stopped frightening you. Somewhere between a burned card and a mended flounce, the work became yours. Frost flowers are climbing the window glass again. The ice will bear soon, on the Serpentine. Some morning in January early, before Gloucester Square wakes, before the crowds come, there will be 4 more minutes on clean black ice, fen fast, nobody's wall, nobody's furniture, already yours, already banked in the only bank that matters, spendable 1,000 times in memory and never a farthing the less. Listen to the house, the little Kilburn girl banking the kitchen fire, 2 floors of silence, the tick of iron cooling. Listen to the street, last hooves, a far whistle out of Paddington, the watchman's tread on New Frost. 500,000 chimneys have banked their fires under this one lid of winter sky. And beneath them, in 10,000 cold-back bedrooms, the grey army is putting out its counted candles. All the companions, all the governesses, all the dragons of England, the keepers of other people's daughters, the mothers on hard chairs, the Hannahs on their landings, the watchers going off watch, 1 candle at a time. Go off watch, Louisa. Nothing happened tonight. Nothing ever does. That is the trade. And the trade held. The wall held. And then, this is the part nobody tells you, the wall got to lay itself down at last and become a bridge, and the girl walked over it and the bells rang. Centuries will pass. The London you know will change beyond recognition. The crinolines will fold themselves into museum drawers, steel hoops and all, and be smiled at. The gas stars will give way to lights nobody in Bayswater could dream, and the horses will vanish from the streets. 50,000 of them, gone like snow, and the plane trees of Porchester Terrace, thin as walking sticks, will stand up thick as towers over houses cut into flats. The chaperones' bench will empty, quietly, 1 season at a time, until the word itself goes strange in people's mouths. A little hood, hung up for good. Girls will walk alone down any street in London. They will ride alone, write to whom they please, earn their own bread, keep their own £8,000, close a door behind themselves and think nothing of it at all. Nothing. And never once hear the click of a bent bolt in their lives. But people will still watch the ones they love step out into the world, still lie awake doing sums of danger that cannot be proved, only doubted, still stand a little behind at the edge of the bright room, pretending to mend something ready. Some things don't change. The watching changes its rules and keeps its heart. The wish to keep somebody safe doesn't change. And you, lying in your own dark this minute, in a room you may lock or leave as you please, with nobody counting your dances and nobody pricing your quarter hours, you walk about all day with more freedom in your pocket than the whole of Bayswater held in 1863, and it weighs nothing, and it cost you nothing, and Georgina Pemble would not believe 1 hour of your ordinary Tuesday. You are the heir of all those stolen minutes. They compounded palm to palm down 1.5 centuries into the whole shape of your life. Spend a little of the fortune then on this. Rest. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Louisa Hart in her attic room on Porchester Terrace 160 years ago in the warmth of her own clothes with the frost on the glass. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let the watching stop. Nobody needs guarding tonight. The doors are locked. The bolt seats home with a click. The whole grey army is off watch till morning. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a door of your own, and tomorrow will keep till tomorrow. That is more than a queen could say that year. That's enough. You've earned this rest. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.